there was no need.
I'm sorry.
This is it. I just pulled my back over.
Wow. After this, we only have 4 classes together.
This is the old class access semester that I did with sad
Or not
boring.
Thanks, gee, thanks.
That I'm genuinely sad is coming to an end.
Oh, okay. That's better, I like that better.
I was going to say is my only class that's not boring, and my brain switched like halfway
Down on
through.
your butt.
I know you've done it.
It
I
happens.
can't do both. They won't let you do both.
No way.
I know. Or else I tell you what. I actually have never donated blood because I tried like twice in my high school years and there was always like my blood pressure was high or whatever. And then when I moved back here, I started doing plasma and I can't do so.
Where do you go to donate plasma?
There's so many places. I go to Grifols here in Warren,
Okay.
but there, I know there's ABO is good and I know there's BioLife and you just Google it.
Okay.
Okay, so, are there any questions before we get going this morning? The first part of the class today is going to be reviewing something that we've already talked about just a couple weeks ago, but I want to have it fresh in your minds because it's a good foundation for where we're going to go. But, all right, I can start talking. No questions? Okay.
I had a question actually.
Pray tell.
I wasn't able to do the reading for today because I couldn't find it.
There is
It
a-
just said Palmer.
Oh, does that say that in the, it shouldn't even say that.
There was no reading for today?
There's no reading.
Oh, wonderful, good, I'm glad.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
I was like,
should
I
have-
can't find anything with Palmer, so
Yeah.
I'm just gonna not.
That was a note for myself, and that, I didn't mean to transfer that into the.
Perfect, thank you.
Anything else? All right. So, recall what we discussed at the beginning of our Routely discussion, where you have an agent that does an action that has effects. Now, as Routely tries to argue, it would seem that our contemporary ethical structures are inadequate to couch environmental concern. He seems to favor the notion that we need a completely new environmental ethic. With Hortequin, we looked at what the basis of one of those environmental ethics might be, being in Confucianism, in Eastern thought. It would be extremely challenging, it would seem, for us in the West to completely divorce ourselves from cultural ways of thinking that we've had for our entire lives, and all of a sudden start being Confucians or any other Eastern form of thought. So a lot of environmental ethics can be couched in one of the traditional ethical frameworks. And you could probably even look at Confucianism and recognize that there are significant overlaps in Confucianism with virtue theory. Like there are a lot of philosophical articles that have been written showing how a lot of the principles in Confucian thought merge nicely with Aristotelian virtue ethics. But having said that, I'm going to go back and unpack this again. So if you are looking at the effects of an action or a sequence of events and determining whether that was a good or a bad thing, you are engaging in what is referred to as consequentialism. You are looking at the consequences of an action. So if you look at, say, providing aid to Gaza, that would be widely acknowledged as being a good action because it has good effects, providing aid to people in Gaza. The most famous consequentialist theory is what is referred to as utilitarianism. This was what was made famous by John Stuart Mill. And the basic motto for utilitarianism is the greatest good for the greatest number. Some problems with this motto. Now, granted, Mill never said this. This is just kind of what has been attached to utilitarianism. But two of the central questions that plague this are definitional terms. First one is, what is good? I'll actually ask you that. What, assuming that you are a consequential, assuming you are a utilitarian, what is good? What should we be promoting in the world? Yeah, good.
I think good can be like synonymous with benefit, the greatest benefit.
Okay. So benefits,
Ooh,
ooh.
never mind, I was thinking about it deeper. Because you can benefit something in an altruistic way.
How so?
Like Hitler's reign of power benefited him more than necessarily benefit
Okay,
the betterment of humanity.
but that would be
In his mind, he was benefiting the world though.
Okay, that's a good point, good point.
Just kind of going on that, another way of going on, like, he was, pushed for the first ever, like, active, like, reduction of smoking.
Really?
Yeah, he was super anti-smoking.
I know he was vegetarian.
Yeah. But he pushed one of the first, like, government push anti-smoking campaigns,
Oh.
which has inspired further campaigns in different countries, though I doubt they would admit it, but, you know.
Yeah,
But
he was, he was actually pretty mean when people would start eating meat in front of him. Okay, so then we could say, maybe a benefit of some type, but what is beneficial? Something that benefits me would be a new pair of shoes. Just picking that up. Is that good enough to base our ethical theory on? That we should give, this is the good that we should be providing for everyone is shoes.
I think another way to look at good, it would be like, how does it increase happiness?
Okay, so happiness is the good?
Yeah.
What if, to go back to our Hitler example, killing Jews makes you really happy?
Well, I think that makes more people sad than it makes you happy, so then we're getting the number.
Okay, so then we're
X-nay that one.
okay. That was way out.
Talks at the narcos.
Okay.
I'm just saying, it depends on your majority. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
there's a lot of different things, like, that's the problem with happiness. Like, this was talked about in the ethics and values class, probably to an extent that that's all the semester was about. But like, happiness is such a value that is so interchangeable, because what makes someone happy at one point of their lives can be completely different at another point of their lives as well. Like, happiness is so fickle when it comes to,
What causes you happiness may change, but the
the feeling
experience,
doesn't.
the feeling of happiness
Yeah.
is.
But it changes so frequently. Like, what makes you happy, and then you learn something about that thing, and now you're not happy about it.
Like Legos used to really make me happy, and now I'm just kind of like,
So,
$200.
Yeah.
So the thought I had for like what good could be would be like either like stability or like normalcy. So just,
Oh, okay.
like I'm trying to think of how to describe it. The good is to, get people closer to a line that is stable.
Okay. I mean, these are all great ideas. From a philosophical perspective, though, if you keep asking the question, okay, well, why do you want benefits, or why do you want stability, or why do you want Legos? It all comes back to basically happiness. It gives you happiness or
That's what I'm hearing, so one.
Good job, Lisa.
Thank you. I'll be bragging about this all day.
Okay. This is, you can ask, well, why do you want stability? Why do you want benefits? Why do you want all of these things? Those questions make sense, but, well, why do you want to be happy? That question doesn't make sense. Why do you want pleasure? That is a self-evident value. Well, this, then, it's an interesting thing, because if we base utilitarianism on happiness or pleasure, which is the most common form of utilitarianism, it's what's referred to as hedonic utilitarianism. And there's actually even a hedonic calculus that you can do to ascertain how pleasurable or how valuable something is, how good something is. The hedonic calculus. It sounds a lot more complex than it really is. based on utilitarianism then, it would seem that the number that we should focus on would be any entity that can experience happiness or pleasure. If happiness and pleasure are good things, and pain and displeasure are bad things, that is what we are basing our ethical framework on, it would seem that the number that we ought to be concerned about are any organisms, any entities that can feel pleasure or experience pain. So that seems kind of a very nice segue into, would seem, environmental ethics. Because we are looking at not only humans, but we're looking at any sentient organism. There are a number of obstacles to utilitarianism that demonstrate how there are situations in which it's actually better to harm more people than fewer. That it's actually it's more ethical to cause more people harm than fewer.
Is this like the Trump problem?
It is like the Trump problem. So for an example, if you are this amazing surgeon that has 5 patients that need organ transplants or are gonna die without organ transplants, and you have some filthy college athlete that walks into your office, perfect match for all 5 people. You could, in theory, kill that one person, harvest their organs, and save 5 lives. But I would hope all of you would recognize that that would be a bad action to do. That saving 5 and sacrificing 1 in that case is a bad thing. It says that there are some actions that, regardless of the consequences, we should not do. If you are looking at the action itself, you are engaging in what is referred to as deontology. This is what was popularized by Immanuel Kant, and he went through a very thorough discussion of how this theory was based and how we can ascertain whether or not actions are good or bad. Not going to go through that right now because that would take at least a week to discuss, because it's very complicated. It's fun, but it's complicated. Within deontology, there are 2 main tests of an action. There is what is referred to as the universalizability. I love writing that word. And there is the humanity as an end. Universalizability requirement forces you to ask the question, if anyone who was in my situation, who had this decision to make or had this action that they could make, if they were to do that, would that be permissible? Would it be permissible for everyone to behave in the way that I am behaving assuming they are in the same situation that I am. If you say yes, that's fine, it passes that test. If you say, well, no, it fails that test, and that's a bad action. The humanity as an end test looks at the fact that we ought to treat all people as an end in themselves and never merely as a means to our ends. So for example, you are going to the grocery store and you are checking out. Cashier is being a means to your end. You want to, take your groceries home. But you should not use that cashier merely as a means to your end. You should recognize that cashier as an autonomous, independent agent that has their own life. There are things that are important to them, things that are valuable to them. They are a fellow human, and you ought to treat them as such. If your action does not treat humanity as an end, treats someone merely as a means, that action fails. If you go back and look at the individual that is engaging in the action and determining whether that is a good person or a bad person, you are engaging in virtue ethics. And as we've discussed, this is based on the notion of what humans fundamentally are, what their function is, what their purpose is, and if they are fulfilling their function. Most importantly, the defining characteristics of humans are things like reason, rationality, morality, all of these things that other organisms, mere beasts, lack. And so we ought to engage in those unique attributes that we possess. We discussed the 4 classical virtues of courage, temperance or moderation, wisdom, and justice. Those are the classical virtues. Those are really unique to humans. Humans are the only organisms that we are aware of that possess these virtues, or that possess these capacities. Each of these can be tacked on to, or can be used to show that there are ways in which we can interact with the non-human world that can be considered immoral. You all remember the distinction between moral agents and moral patients, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. If you want me to, I'll go through it again. So with that foundation, then we lead into basic ideas for environmental ethics. Well, you already know about instrumental and non-instrumental value or intrinsic value. We don't need to go over that. So remember our discussion of the last man. all seem to agree that the last man did something wrong, something incorrect. Why? What was wrong with that action?
It was justified.
It was justified? Okay, in what way wasn't it justified?
He caused harm without obtaining any good.
Okay, okay. Maybe he was
Flexible for it. That's right.
okay. Reason.
We were talking about like bringing things back to happiness, like those animals can potentially like feel happiness or pleasure, and so
Okay.
killing them, like even if they're not human, you're still doing something impermissible. 'Cause they
Okay.
can feel.
They can still feel. Would it matter if the way that he killed all of them was completely painless and they didn't know?
I would say no, because we're still killing. I don't think that the actual like, I think that like the death goes beyond the like physical feeling of it and you're killing them, and that's rude, so.
Okay.
I think it's wrong because just because he doesn't think that the earth has value doesn't mean that he can destroy it and ruin it for all the other
Okay.
non-human life.
Okay. So both seem to be emphasizing this notion of value then. So then what, in that instance, what is of value? Why is, well, what is of value that is being destroyed? And remember, it's not valuable to humans because there are no humans. So what is of value that's being destroyed?
Well, it's like what you said, how you can't explain, intrinsic value. So, there's no answer to that question.
Using my words against me.
Yeah. How dare you?
Well, you can say things are of value, you know, that things possess intrinsic value, but it's difficult, if not impossible, to give a reason for it. I mean, what some of you seem to be saying is that life itself is valuable. Just this weird, really, it is a weird thing, this life. It's inexplicable in a lot of ways. If you have a goldfish tank and you have one that's floating on top and the others are swimming around, clearly the one that's floating is lacking something that the one that's swimming has. But what is that thing? What is that object? Or what is it that is lacking that can never be returned again?
I don't know, like this goes with like biology. Basically, like it's the cells. Like if the cells don't divide, then it doesn't function.
That's true, but what is making those cells divide though? Why do they do that to begin with? Basically, I'm asking, what is life? And that's a question that has been with humans forever, and we still haven't figured it out. You know, people have come up with explanations that may or may not be true. You know, like life is God-given and it's then taken away by God. That could be it. I don't know. But what is this thing that is given to us? How do we understand that?
I think too. I think it's multifaceted
Okay.
because there's just so many things implemented to what we think of life. Like there's matter, there's atoms, there's molecules, chemicals, like physics. It's more than one word we can describe.
It is. But what I keep struggling with is you can have, like in the dead fish, you have all of the matter and the molecules and all of that in there, but there's something that's missing. So what is that spark that's making everything happen? I think that's kind of amazing. You look around the world, everywhere you look at, I keep saying this tree that I can see outside the window. There is this inexplicable force in the world that we don't understand. And if we destroy that, it would seem that we are destroying something of value.
Well, with living organisms, like usually for the most part, the mass majority is usually gonna be heart, like blood flow, essentially. That's it, like, because when something passes the fish or us, our heart stops moving. Like it's legit the action that stops happening.
Yes.
And once that stops happening, there's no, like, that essential feeling seems to stop functioning just with that one action. Which is, okay.
Oh, why is the heart beating to begin with? What makes it do that? Not my heart.
I think there's a lot of functions that kind of are in play, because like, all of our organs have their own little responsibilities.
They do.
And I think the heart is one of them. That's what it does.
It just is. It just is.
Well, I think about like the energies that flow through us as living beings and every living thing. So I mean, I don't really know where the line gets drawn between dead being, because there's still energy that's like being expelled from that. But I mean, I think that's what causes a heart to beat, right? So,
Energy.
yeah.
I mean, hey, I can zap someone. Get that
Right, but like
radiation.
in, I don't know, like the universe and the earth, like I feel just like there's so much energy that's so interconnected, and that's like what connects us as humans, and that's like, yeah, like that kind of idea is what makes an object animated.
Okay, so then removing yourself from that energy connection, that energy stream, causes death?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know.
But going further down this, if we're saying that life is valuable and that it is impermissible to take life, well then, we can't exist. Literally, we cannot exist. Our life is dependent upon sacrificing other forms of life. Even if you are a strict vegan, you are killing things so that you can live. You are killing celery and carrots and potatoes so that you can live. So there might be something, we might want to say, well, yes, life is valuable, but what is truly important is sentience. Or the ability to feel pleasure or pain. I mean, there are, I'll just list some of these others that I have here. The notion of sentience, diversity is of value. A tree farm for Christmas trees would be less valuable than an entire integrated ecosystem. The ability to flourish ability to be fully what a thing is, to express all of its unique attributes. I mean, think about some of the jobs I'm sure you've had where you are expected just to fill a role. You know, you are just like a cog in a machine. You are valued only for what you can perform or being this cog in a machine. You are not flourishing as an individual. You are not being fully committed or connected to what you are doing. Within a lot of environmental ethics, the notion of naturalness, which I have no idea what that is, but that is presumably something that is important. We can problematize naturalness so that it is a completely incoherent idea. One of the main ways of problematizing this is with the idea of environmental restoration. Let's say that there is this degraded landscape, contaminated with industrial pollution. And people go in, clean out all of the pollution, plant trees, plants in there, and animals start re-inhabiting that area. Is that area now a natural area? Or because it was constructed by humans, does it lack this value of naturalness? Is it unnatural? Is it an artifact? Just like this iPad is.
Isn't it like if those like human man-made like toxins and like chemicals and all that, isn't it just removing those things and just letting nature do its thing?
That is slightly different. That is what is considered rewilding. Rewilding is just basically removing all of the toxins and all of those things and letting nature have its course. Whereas restoration involves people going in and say, planting native trees or native plants in there and trying to speed up the process. So that's, with rewilding, you might be doing something that's more natural, but it could take 50, 100, even more years to get to a point where it is what we would think, well, to get it to the point that it was before the industrial pollution. Whereas if you have people engaging in environmental restoration, it might take a few years, and then it's theoretically similar to what it was like before the pollution event.
So then what would be, like, you know, you said like speeding up. Why would there need to be a speeding up process?
Why would that need to be?
Like speeding, why would there need to be a speeding up, like, oh, hurry, let's get it done, or something?
To try and protect the area, to try and make it more stable. For example, if you just basically clear out all of the toxins, all of the pollutants, so like, let's say you have like a bunch of refrigerators and industrial equipment, you clear all of those out, and you don't plant anything in there, then you just have bare ground. And bare ground is subject to erosion. And so you could actually be losing more than you're gaining. There could be other reasons too. So the big question is, how should people act in the non-human world? I'll just put it on. How should humans act? And why is this normative? Meaning, like, why ought we do this? Like, why is this, what principle is this founded upon? Now, within environmental theory, there's an important distinction here. Most ethics that we've discussed, particularly the ethics you discuss in Ethics and Values, are what are considered anthropocentric. Or human-centered. Traditionally, ethics are anthropocentric because, as far as we're aware, humans are the only organisms that can possess morality. My friend's dog, I love this dog. Her name's Jazzy. She is really enamored with my leg. Okay? That's Jazzy's thing. Jazzy likes my leg, that's fine. It's not immoral that she expresses her affection for my leg. Now, if my friend did the same thing, that would most likely be considered immoral, okay? Especially since he's married. It probably wouldn't be a good idea. So, since humans can act morally, and from what we are aware, non-human animals can't act morally, most of our ethics are basically anthropocentric, human-centered. Within anthropocentrism, humans are the most important entity. Our constraints on activities in the non-human world are limited only by what effects those actions might have on fellow humans. So if a farmer is dumping excess paint into a stream that runs behind his property, and that by doing that, he's polluting the water for another farmer that is downstream, we would say that what he's doing is unethical because he is harming that second farmer that is downstream. It's not unethical because of anything that he's doing to the fish or the water or anything like that. It's only from an anthropocentric perspective, we are saying that first farmer should not be engaging in that behavior because he is harming someone else. Anthropocentrism appears to be the motivation for anthropocentrism also appears to be the motivation for national parks, Forest Service land, even just environmental legislation. the environmental legislation that we have, things like the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, it would seem that those were enacted for the benefit of humans. Humans like having clean air, they like having clean water. So as such, we legislated these actions. We didn't do it because we were concerned that fish were living in a toxic environment, or that, polar bears were breathing pollution. That wasn't our motivation. Our motivation was for ourselves. We have preserved particular areas in the National Parks Service because they have aesthetic value, because they're beautiful, because they're awe-inspiring. You think of National Park Service lands, they are gorgeous. That's why we have protected them, was so that we could continue to enjoy them for an indeterminate amount of time. With US Forest Service land, we are protecting those resources so that we can use them when we need them. We are protecting the forests so that we can go in and log them as we need trees. Or we are protecting those Forest Service lands so that we can mine them should we need to. The notion of sustainable development is also anthropocentric. People who advocate for sustainable development do it because we want to make sure that there are enough resources for future humans, for people to live in a relatively comfortable means for an indeterminate amount of time. Now, opposed to anthropocentric viewpoints are the majority of environmental ethical theories are considered non-anthropocentric. Non-anthropocentric theories. Oh, yeah. One more thing. We will be looking at on Tuesday an anthropocentric environmental theory by Norton. It is what he refers to as weak anthropocentrism. And he has obviously a distinction between strong anthropocentrism and weak anthropocentrism. But most environmental ethical theories are considered non-anthropocentric. They are saying that yes, humans are important, but they're not the only thing that is important in the world. They're not the only thing that has value. Other things, non-human things, do have value, they do possess value, they are important, they should be recognized and treated as such. Now, going back to what we discussed earlier, we can describe these non-anthropocentric theories and map them onto that graph or that little chart that I have. So we can do what are considered individual consequentialist theories. An individual consequentialist theory would be something that someone like Peter Singer would be advocating for. Looking at the effects of our actions on non-human life, whether or not what we are doing is permissible. This is primarily based upon sentience, the ability to feel pleasure or pain. And we would determine something that is good or bad based upon its consequences on the individual organism. Sort of. And the reason I say sort of is because it is not the individual organism that is important or that is considered ethically relevant. It is the states of affairs within that organism. Is that organism feeling pleasure? Is that organism feeling pain? Is that organism, what is going on internally with that organism? If that organism is free from pain, that is a good state of affairs. What is happening is permissible. If that organism is experiencing pain, that is a bad state of affairs, and what is going on is impermissible. The groups of organisms are only valuable insofar as they cause a beneficial state of affairs for the individual organism. So, a group of dolphins is valuable because it causes each of those individual dolphins a better state of affairs. They have the ability to feed themselves and to mate and to do all of the things that must happen in order to continue existing. A diverse ecosystem is good simply because it provides for the individual organisms within that ecosystem all of the necessary things for it to continue to live successfully. It has food, it has, again, the ability to interact and mate, all of the things that are necessary for a successful life. We will not be discussing individual consequentialist theories on that much. They're pretty self-explanatory. Like I said, this is the main theory that motivates animal rights. And it is based on, because Peter Singer is a utilitarian, it's based on the notion that animals can feel pain, so therefore they are ethically relevant. An organism that cannot feel pain probably is not ethically relevant. It would be permissible from an individual consequentialist perspective to squish a fly, because presumably flies don't experience pain. But it would be impermissible for me to squish a puppy, because puppies can't experience pain. Now, another, see, this is why I wish I had a bigger whiteboard. can also look at what are referred to as individual deontologic. So on this, we are evaluating the action itself to determine whether that action is good or bad. The most prominent individual deontologist is Paul Taylor, and we will be reading an article from him. The idea is that the individual organism is valuable in and of itself. It possesses value. That organism ought to be respected because it is the type of thing that ought to be respected. This goes by individual deontologic. No one actually refers to it as such. This is just a way of connecting contemporary ethical theories. This actually goes by the name of biocentrism. All right, so life-centered, biocentrism. Biocentrism has what Paul Taylor, the reason why individual organisms are valuable, independent of the state of affairs that is going on within them, is that they are what Paul Taylor refers to as teleological centers of life. These are all living organisms, possess life, and they are teleological in the sense that they are end-based. They have the ability to flourish. And what we ought to do is, because all life has the ability to flourish, we ought to, at the very least, not prevent it from reaching its full potential. That harming an organism such that it cannot reach its full potential is considered impermissible. So think of zoos. Imagine, if you will, the ideal zoo. All of the animals within the zoo are happy. None of them are experiencing pain whatsoever. They are doing well, so to speak. From a consequentialist perspective, from an animal rights perspective, that zoo is not doing anything wrong, because none of the individual organisms are experiencing pain. From a deontologic perspective, from a biocentric perspective, you still are harming those animals because you are preventing them from living the life that they are supposed to live. Regardless of how happy an elephant may be in a zoo, it is not living the life an elephant ought to live, or was designed to live, of roaming the miles of the savannah every day and having these relationships with its fellows. So that organism is not allowed to fully develop its capacities. Within biocentrism, this is the name that is used. Within biocentrism, the community is valuable because it is a collection of individually valuable organisms. Again, whereas with individual consequentialist ethics, we were looking at the community is only valuable insofar as it provides benefits for the individual organism. This is looking at the community through a different lens. It's saying the community is valuable because it is a collection of individually valuable organisms, individual teleological centers of life. Well, no, I'm going to do one more, and then I'll pause for a moment. Now, if you can take a step further back and do what can be described as holistic. And again, this name is merely a descriptor, it's not an identifying name. So holistic environmental ethics is better known as ecocentrism. This is the name that is always used, ecocentrism. This is the type of ethics that was introduced by Aldo Leopold. And Aldo Leopold is actually a very interesting person. Aldo Leopold was not a philosopher. He was not an ethicist. Aldo Leopold was actually a wildlife biologist. But he came up with what is referred to as the land ethic. And we'll be reading that later on. Ecocentrism looks at the entire ecosystem and ascribes value to the ecosystem. A phrase that goes along with this is thinking like a mountain. This is what we are encouraged to do, is to think like a mountain. Thinking like a mountain involves looking at the entire state of affairs of what is going on, taking the long range view. So something may happen in the short term, which may or may not be permissible, but we can determine whether or not it is permissible when we take the long view, the wide view of what's going on. Ecological wholes are what are important. Is the ecosystem healthy? since the ecosystem includes non-living elements, this is more holistic. This incorporates more than mere biocentrism. Because if you were to reroute a stream that exists in a mountainscape, you would be changing the ecosystem of that mountain, and you would be doing some harm to it. Another distinction that can be made between biocentrism and ecocentrism is with the practice of hunting. So from a biocentric view, would hunting be permissible or impermissible on biocentric?
Yes.
It would be?
I think so.
Okay, why?
Because you're looking at the ecosystem as a whole. If you have,
I said on biocentrism.
oh. Yeah, probably not then, because you're harming animals.
Biocentrism, yeah, you are harming, you are destroying a teleological center of life. For biocentrism, no. Hunting would be a no. But you say for ecocentrism, it would be okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Why?
Like if you have invasive species, like if you have a bunch of deer that are trampling the ground because there's way too many of them, then you have this stable say, hey, this area can take away this many deer, and then people go out and try to kill them.
Exactly. You are, in some respects, you may actually be benefiting the ecosystem by removing things.
Well, there's also things that get added to ecosystems that shouldn't be there in the first place, and so being with this philosophy, like, you would be able to fix mistakes that have happened because of human interaction, or so to speak, and biocentrism, it's like, just let it live,
Mhm.
and if species get endangered / extinct, then that's just the way things need to be.
Well, I also think that like we as humans are part of the ecosystem, and there's like some level of harm that has to happen for us, like we were talking about earlier. And so like hunting would definitely be permissible in this kind of idea of ecocentrism, because like we're helping ourselves live, you know.
There are, Jen,
You can respond.
okay. Actually, I'm going on a different direction, so if that.
Okay. Yeah, I was just gonna say that, like, I think there could also be, like, this could be exploited kind of, because, like, maybe a human, maybe their farm's getting destroyed by deer, so they're saying, oh, this is an invasive species because it's destroying this farmland, but
There are also types of hunting that, or maybe not types, but species that should not be hunted. Things like wolves. On an ecocentric perspective, you should not hunt those, because by removing wolves from an ecosystem, you are damaging that ecosystem. Whereas you can remove, I don't know, a certain amount of deer, and the ecosystem is still healthy, if not even healthier, that would be permissible. But something that your actions, you have to look at your actions and determine whether or not those actions are going to harm the ecosystem. If they harm the ecosystem, you should not do that. Okay, pause there for a moment. I just unpacked a lot. Any questions?
I have a question.
Please.
So, something we were talking about earlier, like naturalness, like when you restore an ecosystem, if you engage in restoration practice, is that natural anymore? Something that I wonder, how does this theory address that? Because it feels like it would kind of say, like, ultimately, for the benefit of the ecosystem, like, it doesn't matter if it's natural, because like, that's not the point, I guess. Is that where this would?
I think that would be fairly accurate. I mean, if you are constructing a healthy ecosystem with ecological restoration, an ecocentrist might say, I don't care if it's natural or not, it's a healthy ecosystem. You know, and to a degree, it would be, if it's a healthy ecosystem, it can exist for an indeterminate amount of time into the future without human intervention.
Right.
If that's the case, it's pretty close to natural. You know, if you have to have humans that are going out there, you know, every 2 days and watering things and weeding, then it's probably not a healthy ecosystem. And these are more traditional, more mainstream environmental ethics. There is a type of environmental ethics that was created by a man named Arnie Nass called deep ecology. That is an objection to these, all of those that we just said. Basically, the idea is that it's very similar to Routley's idea. We need to completely change the way that we perceive us as individuals, that we are recognize that we are integrated into the environment. We are part and parcel of the environment. We need to recognize that humans are just one species amongst many. We are no more important or less important than a population of deer, or perhaps fungus. That life is, some deep ecologists will go to the point of saying that all life is equal. That's a very hard position to defend. As I mentioned before, just living involves death and destruction. That we are being, my body right now is killing bacteria. If we were to say that all life is equal, I'm doing an immoral action just standing here, because my body is engaging in massacring bacteria. So like I said, it's difficult to defend, and Arnie Nass recognizes that and says that this, in theory, this is the way that we ought to operate. In reality, it's very much different. Holism is, we're looking at everything is connected.
Is this another, sorry, or is this a subset of deep ecology or a different idea?
No, this is deep ecology. Yeah, this is deep ecology. Everything is connected. Arnie Nass describes it as what he calls self-realization, and he always capitalizes the S in self-realization as a way of recognizing that what we think of as ourself is a function of everything that is going on around us, everything that we interact with. There is no fixed boundary to our bodies. Our skin is not our boundary. This takes on a lot of Eastern thought as well. There is a lot of Buddhist influences in this discussion, saying that, you know, who we are as individuals is not fixed, it's not static, it's always changing. And we need to recognize that we are intimately connected to the environment. Okay. Those are the basic introduction to where we're going to be going for the next few weeks. Any questions at all? None? Good.
You
That's a
unpacked
great
a
response.
lot, you unpacked a lot, but I think we would need another class to.
I could teach an entire semester on like this stuff. Okay.
Because this is a lot deeper